Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. I didn't have a Czech education, so unfortunately I didn't remember everything. I'll have a few notes if you don't mind. So my question is city planning ready for the future? How do we plan cities going forward? And to answer this, I'm going to put this into some wider context and ask a few questions, and then maybe make a few suggestions as to how we can achieve this. This image caught my eye recently. I think it sort of sets the scene. This is the amount of ice melting every hour in Greenland, and the effects of this are going to be felt around the globe. The implications are rising seawater levels. If you look at the red areas on this map, these are very highly densely populated areas. And so we have to ask the question, where are these people going to go? And we have some beautiful areas here. We have the Venice lagoon with all that architectural heritage and the amazing sort of nature as well. Will they come here? One of the big challenges of the next century isn't going to be imperialistic wars or mineral grabs for territory. It's going to be migration. It's going to be people moving around the world to escape the effects of climate change. This is Prague. This is back in 2002. You may not remember this, but Prague was under 5-7 meters of water. The damage cost 5 billion euros to fix. This is the area that was affected. You can see it's a huge area, and the whole city was closed down for weeks. 1.2 million cubic meters of water was pumped from the metro system. And that's 1/25 of that ice cube you saw earlier. This is South Morava in 2021, a tornado. So these events are not just affecting coastal regions or hot countries. This is everywhere, and it's affecting all our lives, our insurance premiums, and making our lives more expensive. Forest fires, this is a global phenomenon. They're growing in intensity and frequency. And the impacts for forest fires are huge. Massive biodiversity loss, temperature, and it's all because of temperature rises, lower rainfall, and increasing wind speeds. So the disruption is huge: flight disruption, air quality impacts, etc. The population is growing in the world, we know that. Within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have 10 billion people on Earth. And urbanization is growing enormously. If we go back to 1900, 13% of the world's population lived in cities. In the year 2000, it was 47%. By 2050, it'll be almost 70% of people. And so these people have to live somewhere, and we have to urbanize, we have to build cities. Another problem with urbanization isn't just where do we put people, it's how can they afford to live in those cities. We've got a major problem with housing affordability all around the world. And you can see, for example, in the Czech Republic, this is slightly old data, in the EU, in the last 10 years, housing prices have gone up by 53%. In the Czech Republic, by 135%. At the same time, wages have gone up only 30%. So you can see the mismatch. So a lot of you may not be able to afford your own accommodation going forward. This is one of the big challenges. And can we blame it on climate change? Well, yes, we can, because it's about extracting energy, it's about generating new energy, it's about investment in infrastructure for renewable energy. All these things cost a lot of money. Somebody has to pay for it. So let's have a look at that energy transformation and transition that's happening around us. Let's just go back a little bit in history, it's not too far. So this is the Khufu pyramid, built 4,600 years ago in Egypt, and it was built using manual labor and animal power. 5 million tons of stone. It took over 20 years to build, and 20,000 people worked on it. And yet all that energy from those people and those animals was a tiny fraction of the energy we need today to build a small house. So moving on to the next era is the era of biomass. So we're looking at charcoal and timber. we're burning things. We're making bricks and red tiles, for example, like the red tile roofs of Prague. This needs a lot more energy, and the Romans, for example, heated their baths. So we're into a different energy system, which allows us to build bigger buildings and faster. And then we go to the Industrial Revolution and the use of coal. And that allowed huge amounts of energy to be expended to build steel, create steel and iron, large format glass. It powered steam engines, the industrialization of industry, and in fact the industrialization of agriculture. And so you had a huge population moving into the cities, and the architecture of that time was reflected in the energy system that allowed us to build these buildings. And we're now into a system, the current era really is defined by oil, by electrification, and the defining material of our era is concrete. We use 14 billion cubic meters of concrete every year. And concrete is made using cement, and cement contributes 8% of carbon emissions. So it's an incredibly energy and carbon-intensive way of building. So what do we do about this? How do we address this issue? Well, we have to move to a new energy system. We have to move to a new era of architecture and planning. So if you look at the house on the left, this is built from cork. It's load-bearing, it's insulating, it's renewable. It grows, you harvest it, it grows back. And so you can use it again. You can, it's completely low carbon. In fact, it's negative carbon. It actually absorbs carbon, this material. And the building on the right produces all its own energy and is entirely self-sufficient. All of the water as well is recycled in this building. So, and we're powering all this new energy for this is coming from renewable energy, not fossil fuels. Maybe nuclear is forming part of that mix as well. So what's the impact of these new buildings going to be on our cities, and how can our cities be built to reflect the requirements to reduce our carbon footprint? So if we look at cities, if we look at how cities are planned, traditionally they have grown organically, sort of like the rings of a tree. They grow outwards. From the very initial settlement, maybe a market square, it grows outwards as housing. And as the city grows, we need to plan the city. We need to think, where are we going to build next? What functions are we going to put where? And so we have master plans. We make master plans. And these are 3 master plans of Prague, going back from 89 to 99. And we hope the new one in 2026 will be valid very soon. But taking the middle one, which has been valid now for 25 years, so that's really not reflecting where we are in terms of our energy requirements, our future decarbonization goals. You can see a lot of colored spots, and basically those colored spots is it's a land use principle. It defines where we put certain functions. So we put housing here, we put schools here, we put factories here, and then we have to build a big network of transportation to get between where you live and where you study and where you go to school. And as that becomes full, we grow outwards, and the city continues to expand horizontally. And this is a problem. This is an extract from the latest master plan, which has been developed using all the latest digital technologies and vast amounts of data, which have been available to the master planners, which is incredible. Just for comparison, the density of the city is an important consideration. So in Žižkov, which is to the east of the city center, we have a density of 23,000 people per square kilometer. That's the densest part of the Czech Republic. And in the city center, we have 4,700. So you can see maybe there's an opportunity. Maybe we're missing something. Instead of building on a field, on cheap or agricultural land on the edge, why don't we build in the center? And then we can make some big advances in how we plan cities. So just for comparison, in case you think Prague is a busy and dense city, if you look at Barcelona or Paris, they are more than double the density of the most dense part of the Czech Republic. So let's have a bit of a closer look. Let's have a little close look at one little piece of Prague. You might recognize this. This is the náměstí Jiřího si podívat in Žižkov, on the border of Žižkov and Vinohrady. Let's just turn this so you can sort of see what the city's really made up of. And you'll see that the buildings themselves, let's just lift them up so you can sort of see them slightly easier. you have the buildings. The buildings make up roughly 60 to 70% of the embodied carbon of the built environment. And then you get the roads and the pavements, the city squares. All these surfaces make up about 15 to 25% of the embodied carbon. And below that, you get the underground infrastructure, tunnels and utilities. Prague actually loves tunnels. We have many tunnels. It's a hilly city. So this is actually probably much higher in Prague. So we have a 60-40 split, which seems fine, but the problem happens when this happens. The green line is the decarbonization of buildings going forward. As we decarbonize buildings and the buildings become less energy intensive, then the amount of energy required for the infrastructure goes up. And when that goes up, it means something. What it means is that when we grow the city, we are adding far more energy, far more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere than we need to do. We need to build compact cities, low-carbon compact cities. So we need to resist this temptation to grow out. And we need to do this. We need to grow in. And we need to incentivize people to do this. So how do you do that? How do you persuade people to build in the city center? By doing so, you make everything better for everybody. You make it cheaper, make it easier to travel and get around the city. Knowledge sharing is better. Businesses that are close to each other perform better. There's innovation. So a couple of thoughts just to add to that, just to make it a little bit more complex. The EU is bringing in a new emissions trading system, which is basically going to tax inefficient buildings. So if your building is using a lot of energy, you will have to pay a lot more for that energy. And what do you think the tenants in those buildings are going to do? They're going to say, well, I'm not going to pay this energy, so I'm going to move out of that building. And then the landlord's going to say, but I can't pay to fix my building because I don't have any income. So what's a big danger is that we're going to get a ring of buildings around the city center. So the city center will be nicely preserved. These are buildings which will be like museums and galleries, and they'll be subsidized by the EU and by the government. And then around that, we could get old buildings, which are maybe or maybe not historical, maybe protected, but will be too expensive to work in, to live in, and too expensive to repair. So there's a big danger. So we need to incentivize people to fix those buildings. If you look at the map here, the red areas are tall buildings in the master plan, and the gray areas are where there are low buildings. I'm not suggesting we build tall buildings in that central part, but I think there may be a strategy, there may be a solution. That's the UNESCO protected zone, just for interest as well. If we just take a precedent from Bologna, back in the 11th century, they opened a new university, and over the next couple of centuries, thousands of students flocked to the cities to study. And they needed to be accommodated. And eventually the city realized there's a problem, they can't accommodate them, or they'd have to expand the city. So they had another way of solving it. They said to the landowners, the building owners, extend your buildings on the upper floors above the pavement, so you can cantilever over the pavement to add space for students to live and for people to build the universities and things. And so they did that. And in time, the cantilevers were too big, and they needed to prop the cantilevers up with wooden, and then brick, and then stone columns. And so eventually, you get this incredible network of 40 kilometers of arcades in Bologna. And it's an incredibly ingenious solution to the housing affordability and housing accessibility process, whilst not expanding the city. So they just made the streets narrower and made the buildings wider. So is there something similar that we could do in Prague to address the housing shortage and also the densification of the city? And of course there is, and we're already doing it. So this is in Karlín. It's an industrial building, it's a heritage building, but it's been extended up by a couple of floors. This is a building we worked on a couple of years ago. It's a beautiful building from the early 1930s. And we added one floor to it. Nobody really noticed, to be honest. It took us over a year to get permits to add that one floor. But in fact, many people say it actually looks better than the original building, which looked a bit like it was unfinished. So there are many opportunities. So when we have heritage authorities telling us we can't change existing buildings and heritage buildings, don't believe them. It's wrong, and it's very destructive for the future of the city. This is a great project as well. So this is in Žižkov, that very densely populated area. It's a building from the early 1930s. It was an office building. The office building is being turned into flats. There will be 600 apartments there for key workers, for students, and it's affordable rented housing. And they've added a couple of floors to the street there. But you wouldn't believe the pressure from heritage to stop that development. And yet this is exactly what we should be doing in our cities. A couple of examples from London. You can see London's a very dynamic city, and I think people approach things in a slightly more creative way. You can do incredible things when you go up. And Prague has some good precedents as well. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do it. So I'll very quickly just fly through this. This is the master plan of Prague as it is now, the new one which will hopefully come valid in the next year or so. If we zoom in a bit, we can see there are numbers on those little squares. Those numbers are floor heights, numbers of floors you can build in the city. My very simple proposal, and I think it may be worth considering, is just add 1 towards those numbers and make it so people have to build another floor, not that it's. In fact, if you don't build another floor, you don't get your permit. So you change the argument, you flip it round completely. When you densify the city, you have to do other things as well. You have to make sure it's livable, you have to make sure it's an attractive environment for people to be in. And this is just an air quality map of Paris. And over the last 15 years, or even actually last 10 years, the mayor of Paris has undertaken a number of measures. For example, they have pedestrianized 300 streets in the city center. They have added 200,000 trees. They have banned parking for SUV vehicles, and everybody loves the results. And they are steadily greening the city and making a resilient city, dense. As you know, Paris is twice as dense as Prague. So when we build, we need to build green in our cities. We need to build on the roofs, green facades, green trees in the streets, and green zones in the streets. Vienna is another great benchmark. Every other street in the residential districts of Vienna has a pedestrianized street with greenery. These are the garden streets in Vienna. Fantastic precedent, which we should be doing here. Imagine Vinohrady, every other street like this. I think we need to do this. And we also need to build for climate resilience. So when we're doing landscape areas, they need to be flood resilient. They need to be, instead of building a concrete pipe or a concrete tank under the road, let's keep it open. And that will encourage biodiversity. It'll cool the city. And I think everybody will have a happier, more enjoyable experience of the city. A couple of images there. Wenceslas Square with the, instead of a tram, let's build that. Urban forests, Old Town Square. That's your problem solved. Thank you.